That is exactly what organizations are. Now, when you are talking of implementing AI, any big organization on an average will have 50 subscriptions. God knows what. The first purpose of any application, whether to solve what they are supposed to solve is secondary. The first purpose is to prevent other applications from working. So now, for whoever of you, if you are a startup, you are trying to implement AI, you are like, oh, why the hell didn't it work? You have to deal with the scratch first. And you have to deal with the people who are in charge of that. So, when people talk about, oh, how will I share data, what will happen, you have to first understand that you are the third layer. The first layer is the organizational graph. The second layer is the subscriptions are already there, that layer of graph. You are coming in as the third layer. Don't think that, oh, I am AI, so I am the boss. No, you are not. With that, I'll first give the mic to Shantanu. You can introduce yourself and say on something on this topic.
Hi, first of all, thank you for coming. It's a great place. It's an honor to be here. Certain things working when I stand on that side, I stand on the other way, where I usually tend to stay from the last person. But nice trying here on my side. With that, I'm Shantanu. I'm a researcher at MIT. I've done a couple of startups, two startups that are the solo founder. The second one is with Facebook, and then I run Facebook's emerging market for product sales. And then something is back then. But I came back to India for a little bit. I was chief scientist for them, a training company called BFI. And then I was the chief scientist for Airtel, and then I was CTO for the third largest British bank, the NatWest Bank. Currently my area of research includes three areas. One is the internet, which is known as the number in the 90s. The second area is the post-AI society, which is how the agents and AI work together, how that system how will the key questions that I make using with the distinct facts when the AIs are working, how much time to work with the AI. And the third area of the research is safe, not audible. Okay, I will pause. How about now? All right. Perfect. Should I replay? Should I do an action replay?
No.
Okay. All right. So and the third area of the research is the safe AI in healthcare. I have a startup called Seven. It just came out of the stealth this week, today, actually yesterday. Because we went to know what's happening. We sort of decided to keep it stealth for a while more, but then I think that is the best way to do a big announcement. So those are three areas. Ask me all questions about agents and how internet will change, software agents, and how the society will change, and anything with healthcare AI and how to make it safer and secure. By the way, how many of you have watched the Matrix movie? Alright. What was the people called? The one in the black suit. Agents. And we had to invent those darn agents to come and serve in our society. I don't think we more are forcing that. With that,
So all of you who are on Airtel, the infra works because of him. A network company is a very complicated company and that is where AI will ultimately get. So I think that is one of the first places where AI will get adopted, lots of agents. So if you can talk a little bit about the knocks at Airtel and what it does, where you see AI going to that.
I'm Pankaj Chopra. I take care of the Network Operations Center for Airtel Pan-India Network Operations. What I really do in a sense, is I ensure that all the businesses, all your startups, they keep running all the time 24/7, and I'm able to offer reliable services for all of you. I know it doesn't happen all the time, but the endeavor is it still stays like that. In the sense, what we really do, what I really do is we manage and monitor the health of the network end to end, be it faults, be it services, be it change management, be it performance or capacity. Say for example, we have T20 cricket World Cup running these days, and I have to ensure that there is no buffering across services when we watch the matches online. That's part of my job. And I, instead of watching the match, have to ensure all the time that my monitoring matrices are all in place all the time. Now, what we have been also trying to do over the last few years, we are trying to move heavily towards AI and automation in terms of fault management, wherein rather than just monitoring the faults, we kind of predict and act before something happens. In terms of managing a large network, or while it's a network, what we really provide to the customers is services. And for every service, we have to monitor the quality of the service. We have to monitor the uptime of the service. And it's not easy in a complex domain to do all of that. That is where we are trying, we are working closely with many partners and internally to move towards AI and figure out how the data from different sources can be ingested into one common orchestrator and coordinated in a way that I can better predict the root cause analysis of any problems. So that is the prime mover for us towards moving towards AI. A very big initiative, a very big part of the problem is the change management. As the networks evolve, as the services evolve, as the growth happens, what we have to do is a lot of changes in the network. And I hope all of you know what really happens when the changes are made in the live network. We end up making mistakes, and that is across everywhere, across telcos in the US, in Europe, in Australia. So Cloudflare went through a major run a couple of months back. Amazon went through a major outage because of change management. We also have our share of those disruptions that we cause, not intentionally, but while doing certain things in the network which are not supposed to be done, and we do it the wrong way. And that is also another area we are exploring, how we can use the latest technologies rather than human intervention. We can directly use agents and AI to move towards automation or the change management side. That's essentially it.
Yeah. Thank you. Our last panelist is Tarun. Tarun runs E2E networks for those of
Sorry about that. Need some help.
Hello. My one is gone. To access that. So to access that, you need Pankaj's lines, because if you have to upload terabytes of data, you need his lines, and then you will need his compute to do the actual compute. So I'll get to some very specific questions. What is the health of the overall compute ecosystem in India? The first 1 year back, we were complaining, oh, this country doesn't have GPUs. Now we do have some GPUs, not a lot, but some GPUs. But can people afford to pay? Are they paying? Do the use cases make sense? Is ROI there? Does it need some kind of support? I don't know, government, private sector? So,
Yeah, thanks. So, launching straight into the answer. Some background about us. So we have been around as the cloud for India since 2009. A lot of unicorns in India that we see today were born on E2E cloud, and we hope to repeat that fate with the AI startups, where a lot of AI startups were born on top of E2E cloud. So that being said, we asked about the state of compute in India today. So see, we are 20% of world's population, and we have 2% of world's compute capacity. Now, I think from last year, the situation might have improved from maybe 2% to 4%, but we have a long way to go. So we are still looking at like adding compute infrastructure in terms of like how do we have 10x of compute infrastructure that we have today. So that is there. Now regarding like basically are people paying for that compute? Is the compute efficient? Now India is a very unique country that like we need best of the services at lowest of prices. I think Pankaj can also attest to that. Best of the services at lowest of prices. So how we set out to achieve that was by building our own sovereign cloud platform, where we said that we can never be in control of our destiny by negotiating for prices for services and software which is produced by others. So we took a first principles approach where we said that okay, it can take a bit longer to build something, but we have to build it in a way where we control our destiny. Now take the case of I have seen people being very dismissive of open source. Oh, these guys wrap around a whole bunch of open source to build something. Company which made its bones like wrapping around open source, and it's like now the core piece of another very large company who acquired it. I think like they do billions of dollars of revenue in selling open source. Now, open source wrapping around is not like an easy part. Like so, there are several levels to it. Like you're using open source as a user. You are using open source in a way where you understand what does open source do for you, and then you understand it. Then you actually choose that particular open source because who knows how to configure it, package it, knows which versions which will be compatible with other versions of open source. So there is a whole lot of work that needs to be done in terms of supporting software that you are running for your customers. So when you say that you have built something, you own the whole thing in a way that you are able to fully support that whole thing for your customers. Now let's start from hardware. Like cloud, of course, has a lot of things. So there is hardware, there is software, there are services. Then all the things that Pankaj spoke about, like there is change management, there is an ability to understand that like what do you monitor, what's the observability, how do you predict what are the failures. So cloud has to do everything for the customers for some very unpredictable workloads. You don't know what the customers are going to run. So you have no way to predict like how your infrastructure will react. What you can do is you can make as generalized as possible as infrastructure, and then kind of like figure out the problems in runtime. So we talk about bigger clouds fail, and there is a cascading impact because there was a failure in change management. But that's one part of that. Another part of that is that like these are very very complicated systems with more than a couple of hundred pieces that you have to manage together. So essentially, like the interoperability between all these parts like leads to many kind of issues that like you cannot predict. You can only react to them. The faster you respond to them, the better your uptime. So two parts, like you can't design for everything. You have to be very responsive to whatever has happened. And so first principles means that the playbooks are evolved by you yourself. So which means that like you are learning along with your customers. So I'll give you an example, like the shift from CPU to AI. In the CPU world, like 10 terabytes, 100 terabytes used to be large amount of storage. Customers used to come, oh, I have got a lot of data. We were like, okay, how much? It's like 10 terabytes. Yeah, don't worry about it. 10 terabytes is fine. Then customers started coming in and saying 100 terabytes. Then we were like, yeah, don't worry about it. Now customers have started coming in with petabyte scale data. So again, the answer is same, but to give the same answer, you needed to put in a lot of work to scale from people using 10 terabytes in production to 1 petabyte in production, and consequently have that kind of scale out storage IOPS to be made available. So net, the state of AI is that yes, we have learned along with the rest of the world at the same time. The scale might be different in terms of number of GPUs, but we know all the same things that the rest of the world knows. So we are very much at the bleeding edge in terms of how to build the infrastructure for AI in India. Now, depending on how quickly the customers start off taking those GPUs, we should be able to kind of like scale up building of the infrastructure. And I do believe that there is a lot of gap even today. So, and I don't think the solution lies in government subsidy alone. I think like there has to be a realization that you cannot compete with the world on cheap labor. You have to increase your productivity, and that productivity will only come from AI. And AI is yet another digital transformation. Digital transformation was you redesign for the computer databases. AI, fortunately, is you redesign for human input. So what we see with our eyes, computer vision can see. What we hear with our ears, like basically voice AI can hear and respond to that. And same applies to any other kind of input. So language can be the language of DNA, the language can be the language of like ultraviolet which your eyes cannot see, X-rays which your eyes cannot see, any kind of visible, invisible spectrum, any kind of like wavelength of rays. So all of that is data for AI, which is very similar to the way of like unstructured way data that humans deal with. So sorry, I have gone on and on. So I will back to you.
So just to add some context to what Tarun was saying, if you look at the popular global clouds, AWS, GCP, Azure, all of them work at gross margins of 90% and up. So basically what Tarun is saying that if we are a country which is cost conscious, have always been. Our economics are like that. So if we have to deal with this world, then we have to make our own cloud, which is what he is doing. It's like you can, raw metal is something like you go to the grocery shop and buy vegetables, whereas what GCP gives you is prepared food. So unless you are willing to do that, the margins there are so huge that it will not work in India. And open source is a very interesting thing. People think that open source does not make money. So Linux was completely open source. Red Hat, when it sold some 12-15 years back, sold for $20 billion. What open source basically means is at the fundamental level it is open source. Everything you build on top of that you don't open source. That you can sell very well. So open source is definitely one of the best use cases or best paths for this country, simply because as a country we don't have VCs or organizations who put in $100 billion, $200 billion into companies, so we can't afford to pay that kind of thing. So that brings me to the next question. Shantanu, do you think banks are willing to put their critical workflows on AI in the next 1-2 years? Or they will just play around the periphery, do some small things? The question that she was asking earlier. Do you think organizations will put critical workflow on AI in the next 3 years?
Okay, that's a good question. So my answer is that anything that's say consumer facing as the CTO for a large bank, and anything that's consumer facing that does not touch the core customer data or core operations data will move to the AI, move to the AI/GenAI very quickly, right? Because that's it. You see a couple of things. You see efficiencies of orders of magnitude. You see risk, which is limited. If it fails, all that happens, your campaign doesn't work. Nothing gets displayed. And you also see ability to expand, turn things up, do things on very quickly, given today's infrastructure. So that you also consider flexibility. Given those three, the consumer-facing operations, call center, public campaigns, and all of that, will move very rapidly in the next 24 months, if it already hasn't moved. The ones that are core operations in banking will take time. Will take a bit of time. The reason for that is if you look at how the bank's infrastructure runs today, it still runs on an infrastructure that's right? The Himalayan servers that run all the US transactions date back to the 80s. The reason for that is they are fault tolerant, they're running 6 or 7, 9, 8 to this day, right? The two things that you don't want to mess around with. If you didn't get a marketing campaign, you probably lost in the Indian context a 50 rupee cashback. If your bank didn't run a transaction and your EMI didn't get deposited, the impact on that is very high. Now take one step further. If you ran it on an infrastructure that's not, I would say, 6 times or 7 times, and your money was not available for 2 days, that's a far bigger disaster than not getting a security coupon for free. So that will take a while. The use cases will have to be developed. As I said, two things, right? The back and the health. If you look at the Paretos, right? The Paretos of the use cases in the banks and others, in the internal function, the Paretos are pretty fast-paced, which means a lot of the internal functions have equal importance. There are not internal functions that are more important than others. If you risk adjust those internal functions, those Paretos are even more fat-paced. So I'll give an example. If you're trying to build an autonomous AI for as a doctor, right? A healthcare AI, the training data that's available for regular use cases, fever and so on and on, are a lot. But the training data that's available for high use cases, triple bypass surgery, history of substance abuse and so on, are so rare, right, that you won't be able to get enough training data in the next 10, 20, 30 years. Right? So I'll give an example. There are companies that are raising hundreds of millions, so they are mega autonomous stuff. If you go to a doctor today, you actually get about 50 data points. Your vitals, medications, past, and so on. If you say in order to build a model, you are building the data in 2 weeks. Blood pressure high and blood pressure low. And that's not going to be the model, right? It's going to be about 10 weeks. 2 to the power 50 is 2 bits, 50 parameters, is about 10 to the power 17. Approximately the number of atoms in the universe. So if you want to build an autonomous medicine, anything that's plenty, you'd actually need the number of AHI, electric health records in Myanmar, that's in the order of number of atoms in the universe. We are 10 to the power 9 human beings. Each of us would have to have 10 to the power 9 number of AHIs before 10 to the power 4. So what you end up building is something that is very, very risk-adjusted, be it for death, or I'll take in this case the healthcare is an easier one for healthcare. One of the reasons why we started this one, as I just disclosed, we're launching it here, is because we understand how risk-adjusted AI works in the case of healthcare, especially in the US healthcare, and what are the functions that can be run. So for example, if you're running a building as a function, the risk-adjusted aspect of it is low. If this a bill, it gets paid later on. You run analytics, that's low risk. You try to run autonomous medicine, that's high risk, and you don't have enough data. So the whole spectrum of what gets deployed in the front end versus what gets deployed in the core function is going to be played out by a couple of things. One is the availability of technology, second is the reliability of the technology, and third, the most important aspect is the risk adjustment application of that technology in real life. You can mess around with your marketing coupons. Last thing you want to be able to mess around with is your money or your health. Those are bad.
Okay, fair enough. Most of us 10 years back, when we had a broadband connection, 256 Mbps was yes, state of the art. Now 2 GB sounds a little low. 2 questions for you, Pankaj. First is, what was the average data usage per customer, both consumers and corporate, 10 years back versus what it is now? Where do you think it will go 10 years from now? And adding to what Tarun had said earlier, we want everything but we don't want to pay. So do we have the infra and will we have to pay?
I shared my personal experience way back in 2004. I was applying for the US visa, and I remember at those times I did not have a broadband connection at my home, and I had because I was at that time also I was kind of closely related to the telco, so I asked one of my friends to give some additional 2G data slots to me, so that I can upload my pictures and documents for visa for my employer, future employer. And it took me almost 3 hours at that time to upload those documents with 4 data time slots. Now, talking of today, everybody knows what is the scenario. But 10 years back, the data usage per customer was more in terms of like kbps, like still about 200, 300 kbps per day. Today, this is more in the range of 45 GB per month. Per day. I mean, it's huge. It's huge. The change is very, very big. Now, to support that, 2 things that we keep doing is we keep introducing efficiencies in terms of using the right technologies. So as the technologies evolve, the cost of the data per GB keeps reducing. So it doesn't mean, it doesn't still mean that you do not have to pay, you still have to pay. But we are the cheapest, actually almost 3rd cheapest country in the world in terms of the payments that we make to the telcos, monthly payments that we make to the telcos to the tune of about $3 to $3.50 per month. And if I compare it to with what happened in the US, the average rate is about $75 per month, right? But the infra, as I earlier mentioned, the infra in terms of getting the right technologies, getting the right backbone setup is what we always take care of, so that the costs are minimal. Our negotiations with our partners are in a way that we sustain the costs and the capacities over a long time. We ensure that our amortization of the assets is over a period of 10 to 15 years. So we still have networks running legacy back from 96, 97 till today. We do not let everything go off. We use our assets properly. And that is how we kind of manage our costs to stay within the realms of the regulatory environment of the country.
One more. What will be the data usage 10 years from now?
You know, the growth of the data in the last 2 years has been about 200%. So especially with 5G coming in, the data has really exploded. And with the kind of usage patterns that are emerging, we actually see, and there is, I'll refer you to a good report. There is an Ericsson mobility report that is published every month that you can refer to for all the trends and everything. But looking at this trend, and especially with 6G now in the plan, 5G advanced first and 6G coming in by 2029-30, we see by next 10 years, I mean, nobody can really predict, but it would be, going by the rate, it will be petabytes per customer in a month, and that's going to be huge. I don't know how we are going to handle it. We look to our partners on the cloud side and all to help us do this, but that's kind of.
Okay. Tarun, again, I told you I'll give you difficult questions. Do organizations come to you and say, I don't care about all this cloud business, I want my own enclave, I want my own colo, I want you to guarantee that my data doesn't go out to others? Do you get such requests?
As a former customer, I can always say, no, we don't make such absurd requests. We make even more absurd requests than that. With that,
No. So it's not an absurd request actually. So especially with AI, like you don't want your data to train the global AI and then hand over the intelligence to your competitors. So it makes sense for regulated entities who don't want the source of their competitive advantage to be enjoyed by their competitors, to not want to share their data even in tokenized form outside their organization. So a lot of organizations want that I need sovereign AI. Now we need to define the sovereign AI for organizations where one is the data residency. So second part is that are you dependent on licenses that can come under a sanctions regime at a later date? So which is why open source and software built in India becomes very important. So where we say that okay, the infrastructure software layer has to come from India or has to be open source, and even the software that you are getting from India is a source available for you to inspect. That are there any backdoors? Can it be like properly air gapped? And will it work without access to the internet? There are no callbacks which are hidden. So a lot of the times in a lot of organizations, people don't even notice that what is supposed to be on-prem and deployed locally, as soon as you give it access to the internet, which is given by default, it works. Once you turn off the internet, it stops working for you. So like we actually have a software platform which is essentially nothing but everything we built for our cloud packaged for an organization to run their entire cloud on their own in software on top of the system requirements that we specify in terms of hardware. So we call that the sovereign cloud platform. So if you want to choose your own hardware in your own colo with your own people managing the whole thing, you can do that today. So like yes, people ask for that. Yes, there is a valid use case for that both from a regulatory and competitive standpoint, and yes, we support it.
So, okay, this is for all of you. Every startup, as we know, the world of LLM works with data. So for a startup or anybody else to succeed, they need a lot of data. So do you see a future where, say, big banks will say, oh, all of us are sharing data for the common good? Do you see organizations sharing data in a single pool to make a more efficient LLM, SLM, whatever you want to call it? Do you see that world happening, or do you say that no, I only want to extract, I will never give my data?
Sure. So yes and no. So I think like how we can build a competitive economy is by utilizing the data that we generate as a public good.
Yes.
Now we just don't need static data alone. We also need streaming data, and it should enable like the smallest, most powerless guy sitting in a college, a student, to be able to access the data and generate insights from that. I mean, like anyone can do research given enablement. So somebody wants to do research on, say, traffic or pollution in India, whatever data sets are available, let's make it available to every researcher in India to be able to access that. And like we can also put a layering around that, okay, what can be made accessible globally? So we know for a fact that European Union does a lot of public data infrastructure. I think there is a lot to learn from what they are able to do. So for example, like today, 10-meter geosatellite data from European Union is available for free to any GIS startup to use and to generate insights from. I think India has its own unique data sets, population scale data sets that we can make available based on the resolution to either the Indian citizens or Indian companies, and then with some layering, some protection, some anonymization, maybe even globally. So I think we have the potential to be the data and AI capital of the world.
First of all, that was a very, very important question. So I'll tell you a sort of a sidebar that I get everyone that I didn't get to get. People ask, saying that why do you see, given that AI is coming, why do you see the future of the IT industry and BPOs and so on? And there's a great relevance to this question. India have had three strengths, right? We are the application building king of the world. We have had because a lot of the applications we also have the domain expertise, and we generate, thanks to Airtel and everyone else, we generate the largest amount of data. We should think about data in two ways, right? One is the public goods. By the way, banks, specifically the banks already do that. Share the data, for example, about fraud, right? Share the data about IP addresses from where phishing attacks are coming. So there's some amount that happens with the banks, especially in the UK where I work, but a lot more could happen. But the bigger distinction is the public data for good versus the versus the competitive data that you generate for your own bank or a hospital will not give you out patient data or customer data. India has an opportunity to say, as Karan was saying, to be the AI and the data capital of the world, but I will also have the process capital of the world. If you can combine those three, start making public data available on an anonymized basis, we can start building models that are deep vertical models. We are not going to go build, and in my opinion, we should not be spending billions and billions of dollars to build foundation and LLMs. We should build the deep applications for our application. So, for example, if you abstract now, I'm just giving an example, breast cancer data, anonymize it, make it available, we can actually build the best breast cancer model in the world. Cancer, there are lots and lots of types of cancer that are available, for which the data is available at scale because of our population. That's not available anywhere else in the world. That's something we should mind. We should keep in mind as your standard IT application development and IT services and the BPOs decline. We should get ahead of that and start thinking about what's the next generation of industries that are coming and what are the key components to build that industry. In 1990s, a bunch of people, a lot of visionaries got together and built the foundation of the IT industry in India and followed by building up the KPOs. This is the moment. The world is getting restocked with the new agentic internet, the new agentic processing and so on. We should take a lead on that and help restack the India's own advantages in IT, BPO and so on that we have had, and the new advantage that we have become a massive amount of data to generate and build the next generation of industries.
I think we are running out of time. Himanshu, do we have time for a question? Okay. Any audience questions? Okay, I think the audience is asleep. So we are okay.
Because you're talking about organizations, it will be very important to point out what is the employment going to look like in 10 years from now. We are planning all the disruptions, which is great. What's in the future? Are we creating social disruption in the near future?
I think that's a given that there is going to be a lot of social disruption. But every change is also an opportunity. So, like, I think we became the BPO capital of the world. Now, AI capital of the world is far, far better than being the BPO capital of the world. So, in the sense that, like, we should not be data labelers. We should also be the model builders. We should also be the app builders. I think it's a play for going higher in the value chain.
Actually, no thoughts really, but
Because you don't know very large opportunity, maybe you have thoughts on this.
okay. So, firstly, we should not talk of 10 years. The world is changing so fast. We should actually. So earlier question also on the data usage after 10 years. I mean, we should really say how are we going to do it in the next 6 months, next 1 year? How are we going to sustain? And a very similar thing here. The things are going to change very, very fast. But there will be social transformation. There will be transformation in terms of the job opportunities. I don't think a lot is going to change in terms of lot is going to change in terms of job opportunities changing on a different with a different aspect, but nothing is going to be lost here. I think it's an opportune time that we're sitting at. I see people around. So today, my wife, she's a homemaker. She's an ex-teacher, homemaker, ex-journalist. She was telling me, I'm really interested to come to the AI summit to understand what are the things that are going on. I mean, that is the change that we are seeing, and this will definitely generate much more opportunities in the minds of the people, and that is a change we should only talk about.
Thank you. So the difference between the last everything from human mind is infinitely expandable. I think using the technologies that are coming, we will be able to build societies that are far, far more richer than we are. Because the fundamental problems, a bunch of fundamental problems around, like the power, the cost of power is declining and will eventually go to zero. Cost of compute is declining and will eventually go to zero. So a bunch of costs that used to take a lot of part of our life are actually going towards zero. And that gives people the ability and the flexibility to go build things that they want to build. The technologies that are coming are going to make each of us potentially a Superman. And if we can use it, some of us will use it and become Superman. But even for an average person, it will be a far bigger enabler than we have seen in the what I call the conceptive and linear technology of the past.
Absolutely. Everybody is giving a very happy answer. Let me go a little on the darker side. Multiple part answer. Productivity will increase. That's not debatable. But the question is, if productivity increases significantly, you won't need that many people. That's what happens. Second part, Gini index will go up. Gini index is a measure of the distribution of wealth. Basically, rich will get richer. How society adjusts for that, I don't have an answer. It's a sociology answer. AI can't answer that. Third very important part, which is very relevant for India, is that most of the G7 global world, populations are falling, populations are declining. So there is a lot of service to be done there. AI robotics suddenly enables you to do services remotely. So yes, there is opportunity, but if you go back to industrial revolution, the amount of number of hours worked per person, that number has gone down steadily for 200, 300 years. In countries like France, you have laws, you can't work more than 39 hours, 35 hours for various professions. What it means is that the rich don't have hours, of course. If you're an investment banker, company owner, you make whatever you make. But then how do you distribute in the rest of the society? Problem for society and sociology to solve. Because AI is game theory. You can't say that if I won't do it, others won't do it. Others will do it. So if you have to stay ahead, it's like the old job is gone. That's a fact. Whether how much of the new job you grab is up to you. That's it. Okay.
Take a better picture.
Okay, thank you. So, for the last session, can I invite the last session panelists here on stage? Yeah, so thank you very much. So for the last session, let me invite Umakant, Chris, and Dr. Shivyas. Welcome. The last session, which is actually the second session here, is about AI, which is present with different citizens. We discussed how to build collective AI. We discussed how organizations will come together. In the last session, we'll discuss how each individual will have their own AI, which will possibly enable them and bring them together into a more intelligent singular net. And I'll give the mic to Umakant.
who is moderating the session. Please have a seat. Yeah, of course, I think we were supposed to be the second session, but we probably are the concluding session here. So, quick and warm welcome to India. You almost didn't make it, right? So, maybe what we'll start is a quick round of introduction. I'll start with mine. I've spent the last 16 years in airspace. We were building chatbots 16 years ago. It's a company called Imagino. And post that, I set up the first AI-focused venture fund called Pi Ventures. In India, we invested around 15 companies from that. So, Six-Triple, Nirvai, Pixis, Agnikul, we've been watching some of those spaces. So we were funded through that fund, now to the second fund. Then I set up ArtPark. ArtPark stands for AI and Robotics Technology Park, incubated in University of Science. And the idea was to grow the robotics and AI ecosystem in India. So there are now 39 companies in AI and robotics which are getting supported through ArtPark. Of course, one of the big initiatives that we took on the ArtPark is Project Vani and Bhashini. I think some of the stuff that is already there, so there is a big booth out there. You might want to go and check that out. Today, now we are, so it's interesting to see how this ecosystem is coming up. Now we are aggregating all the AI ecosystem in one space. We're naming it Bharat1.ai, and we might be launching it today. Please look out for that. So the idea is very clear that India may come up with something very unique, which could become the template for Global South. So just like payments, one of the things that we've been thinking about is that the cognitive infrastructure that is needed in the AI age, maybe a large part of that may be co-owned or co-initiated by the government, and through government, almost every single citizen could get impacted. And that's a big and very differentiated thinking that India is deeply thinking about. There is a term that we are trying to point around that we're calling it Safe Universal Basic Intelligence, UBI. Not UBI for Universal Basic Income, but Universal Basic Intelligence. And so we thought that we'll set up this session. We talked about why this is important and what could be potentially going under that. Because government is supposed to take care of every single citizen, right? So government is like a cooperative of people. And everybody, when you pay taxes, you basically are buying into a part of the government. So that is why we thought that we will have this session, because it's going to be very important when we're talking about collective intelligence at scale. Fundamentally, we need mechanism to include everyone, right? And how do we include that? By only creating maybe some kind of a digital public infrastructure which is related to the cognitive infrastructure that is needed in the AI age. So that is where we are. Today we're going to quickly discuss that. We'll quickly first start with Chris, who's been doing some fantastic work with Project Nanda. And maybe you can give a quick round of introduction about yourself, where you come from, so that we can, please don't switch on that mic. It doesn't work very well. We will pass the mic around.
Hi, thank you. So, my background is across a very wide range of verticals, applying AI to that range of verticals over the last 20 years. Includes retail, restaurants, analytics, healthcare, and scientific endeavors as well. At the very beginning of that 20 years, when I was in grad school, I took classes on agentic AI. Appealed to me deeply because of my pure mathematics background, and I really enjoyed the abstract concepts that were part of agentic AI back then. Now, kind of fast forward to the era that we're in now, it's incredibly exciting because a lot of those abstract concepts are concepts that we can put in, and we can start to see that concrete action. Over the last decade or so, I've been in advertising tech. That took me on a journey through a number of different businesses, but one of the main ones was my experience with Inmobi. I was based in the US, but Inmobi, a very strong Indian company here. Fantastic company to work with. very enlightening for me because they took a decision at a very early stage to be mobile first. And what that meant was leaving some short-term revenue on the table and building the company with that very futuristic view of the space, so that they could then build for that future. And I think we're in that same environment now, where we look at the future that we see as agentic AI. There are a lot of emerging, incredible capabilities of agentic AI right now. Some of them are very, very nascent. Some of them are not fully baked. We have to acknowledge that. But we all share that vision where they will come to fruition. And just as that mobile-first technology took a number of years to come to fruition, the same will be true for the agentic space, that we'll start to realize that value. And over the last couple of years, I've been lucky enough to work with Project Nanda. That's an open agentic web protocol to help develop this capability for agents to be interoperable and to cross from one ecosystem to another. And so when we think about the open web, the internet, we've got the closed walled gardens of the internet, and the other part of the internet is open. We'll have the same distinction as we move forward into the agentic era, where some of the agentic space will be in the closed ecosystems, and some will be able to cross these boundaries, these organizational boundaries. And that's really critical for a number of different reasons. One is to enable knowledge transfer across those boundaries. But another one that's really critical that I think not enough people are talking about at the moment is that actually most modern economies are built on competition, on the capitalistic nature of allowing competition and encouraging competition. If we only allow agents or only encourage agents by systematic design to operate in these closed environments, then when a bid goes out, a request for proposal goes out to gain bids for a particular service, you're limiting yourself to only a certain number of vendors, and so therefore you're limiting fundamental economic competition. And so that's one of the reasons why I see this as being really, really valuable from the commercial angle. I think from the individual angle, we see the real benefits coming where individuals have this agency. And my background through my time with Inmobi in particular, I saw this transition from a consumer sentiment of having almost very widespread data sharing that became very traditional for Web 2 platforms that we were all a part of through the 2010s. And then I would say around 2018, 2019, consumer sentiment changed in an emotional way, where consumers no longer wanted to share certain data. They considered it to be their data. And so that then put these privacy boundaries up. As we move forwards in the agentic era, we can have agents that are the personal agents, and there's a development with a white paper that's being released today from the team, a broader team here that is DOOT, D-O-O-T, to get the personal agent out there that has access to that you give access to your personal data as you configure, and that is then used to drive intelligence. And so there's a lot of new opportunities there where we're now into this potential for a privacy-based world where we can benefit each individually from that, and that can be configured so that we can then contribute back collectively for that collective intelligence. So I'll wrap that up in my introduction.
Thank you. Hi everyone, myself Dr. Priya. I'm working as a project director at Karnataka AI Firm and a couple of e-government initiatives in the government of Karnataka. So I have 2 decades of experience in e-governance and how government services can be enhanced or how effectively it can be delivered to the public. So I'm heading the Karnataka AI Cell in the last 3 years. The focus areas are inclusivity, because many AI companies say that our model is 99% accurate, 98% accurate, but what is that 1% which can affect, right? So we focus more on inclusivity and more of a responsible AI framework because I've taken a huge amount of citizens' data in the government of Canada. I have more than 6 crore citizens' data at this stage, personal data. So we ensure that how the data is ensured, how AI models are built without compromising on the privacy security aspects of it. So allow to be part of this panel. Thank you.
So just to highlight a bit on this, so digido.in, you can go and check it out. It is getting released today. This is something that we've all contributed to it, and this is a big initiative. The idea is that how can each one of people in India could get empowered through AI. At the same time, we are also talking about anchoring these AI agents into human identity, right? So that even when you have, so people have been doing these interesting experiments with OpenClaw and Moldbook, and at some level it is very promising, very exciting. Of course, Kapil is smiling here because in his area of security, it also opens up a lot of interesting vulnerabilities that people are exposing as well. But it also shows a way where the potential is there. Like if you can actually have your own assistant, which could be there with you all the time, which could have access to the data that you are seeing, and then potentially help you and empower you in many ways. So this is fundamentally also a construct that we've been thinking about at DigiDo. So you can check out on the website digido.in. There is a white paper that is out there. If you can get access to that, please download it and share comments on it as well. We've probably worked on it for a while now, but it is very important that like the people who are probably coming to this conference also get access to it and work with it. Having said that, it is very daunting to think about 1.4 billion people in India having that DigiDoot in one go, right? So we're thinking about that in phases, right? So in fact, today we're talking about that the city that we're trying to build in Bangalore, the entire city will actually have access. So anybody who's living in that city will have access to that kind of universal basic intelligence, and that's how we're planning the infrastructure for it. But it has a whole bunch of challenges associated with it, right? One is when we talk about this kind of cognitive infrastructure at scale, where we're saying, hey, it's going to be for everyone, right? You spoke about that maybe this way, instead of one large company holding all the data about your innermost things, maybe this would be the distributed way, right? So maybe Chris, could you just talk about a little bit about the architecture, right? Like maybe when we're talking about AI for citizen and at citizen scale, this kind of distributed architecture, both in terms of data and compute and the AI models, maybe herald a new way of doing things, because so far we have not done that in the current way, right? So maybe this could be the next way. So do you like to quickly point out what could be the potential attributes in terms of technology that people could contribute to, and at the same time, what could be other challenges that you are foreseeing that maybe I've not spoken about as well?
Yeah, so the way I see this is it's really to be considered as an extension of each individual potentially, and the way individuals operate is there's different degree of sharing that'll be true with this architecture. So configurable is one piece. Interoperability is so fundamental to this in terms of being able to operate with across an ecosystem, and it's incredible it's an honor to be a part of this the project. It's incredible to see this come to fruition in India that is so far advanced with UPI, DPI infrastructure already in place. And I think that's really it's not just the technical infrastructure. Obviously, that is critical and fundamental to this to do. But it's the adoption across the community, the adoption by millions, hundreds of millions of people that are maybe not necessarily technical, but they see the benefit to their lives. And I think that's one of the real critical pieces to do that will advance the adoption, but also that will bring benefits to across the community. So I think that's where I see kind of a large part of this.
Yeah, and I think I have this question for thanks, Chris, Dr. Shias, that we've been talking in Karnataka because Karnataka took the lead in e-governance, right, and probably has the most amount of data, in the country, especially if you are looking from a state perspective. Now, as we go from saying, okay, it's an e-governance to maybe more intelligent governance, how do you see the leap happening, right? We talked about, like, from the citizen side, maybe digital could be an interesting metaphor to get behind, right? Maybe you could pilot some of these things in Karnataka. But how are you thinking about it? Because, of course, India is one big, large country. Everything changes in terms of language, in terms of food habits. So there are peculiarities which, when it comes to the state as well, right? So how do we take a nationwide concept and at the same time build a truly personal, agent or citizen agent that could work from the citizen side as well as help in the governance from the government side? So what are your thoughts on what are the few things that you're thinking about even at the CEO level?
Good question. See, from the government of Karnataka's perspective, it's not about AI conversation. It's a governance conversation. So the question in front of us is not whether government should adopt intelligence or AI. It's already there. I mean, how responsibly we are going to do it, how are we going to scale it, is the way I look at it. See, the first thing is we have institutionalized this AI thing in the state by establishing an AI cell. So the basic objective, the vision of this AI cell is to work with the department, identify the high impact use cases where we can save money or time so that the citizen experience will be better, right? So we have a model called something like guide the department, build them, then scale it, then enable with the AI literacy project. That is what we are thinking. And in fact, I would like to mention 2-3 use cases what we have done. The first one is grievance redressal system what we have done. Earlier it was like the citizens have to call the call center, which works only from morning 10 to 5:30 on a working day. I mean, governance is not only about working days and 10 to 5:30, right? The grievance should be able to rise 24/7. And the second thing, if you as a citizen have to raise a grievance, for example, if the garbage is not collected, you need to know which secretariat, which line department, which category, which subcategory. So now, thanks to AI, the categorization problem is very easy. Routing the grievance is very easy. Sandeep is here who has developed it. So, the grievance classification happens less than a minute, round the clock. That is the way. I mean, AI is invisible, but it's embedded in our solution. And second thing I would like to mention about the government efficiency. That for government officers, it requires few weeks to issue a government order or a circular. Now it is happening in hours, if not in minutes at least, thanks to technologies like this. So what we are trying, how AI can be used in improving the service delivery to the citizens, how government can have a continuous engagement with the citizens. And second thing, we are sitting on a huge data, how can we leverage on the data intelligently? I think that answers your question. Thank you.
So, thanks Dr. Shivas. We expect Karnataka government to also take a lead in maybe implementing DigiBoot for the citizens in Karnataka. Maybe I'll share the white paper with you. We'd love to get your feedback and inputs on that. The other perspective that I see very clearly is that, of course, there is a COE that is getting set up, which is going to work on this particular area. The interesting bit is that there is a very big amount of focus, even at the leadership level, right? To how do you use this new technology space to bring governance or government closer to citizens, right? So, in the truest sense, in democracy, government is like a cooperative of people, right? But it hardly functions as such, right? We have 1.4 billion people on an Indian level. Even in terms of Karnataka, we are not small, right? So, how do we bring governance literally on this mobile device or on this personal agent, right? It is a big leap, right? Now, so if you have to think from that perspective, I'd like to actually ask Chris, right? Like, what are the, like, we have some part of the stuff that we have explored with Project Kanda, right? What are the other things that you are seeing in roadmap, right? What do you think that for this vision to come alive, what are the things that needs to get solved? And maybe next, maybe 2 to 3 years time frame, right? How do we bring this? Let's say if we put a date to it, right? Like each one of the 1.4 billion Indians will have some kind of universal basic intelligence with them. Let's say in like next 3 to 4 years, right? So what are the things that we need to solve that probably are not solved? We're trying to gather the whole AI community at Bharatman.ai. Maybe what should we actually tell them? What are the big problems? What are the big unknowns? And maybe how, somebody like Project Nanda, which is bringing the MIT ecosystem into play, given that MIT was a place where the concept of AI was born, right? And the early thinking on AI happened, right? The next evolution may also could come with collaboration with that as well, right? So the one level was that we had this internet which actually democratized access to information, right? Now we are going to have these agentic internet of sort, right? And which will democratize access to intelligence, right? And that that's where all of these concepts like DigiGroot, could potentially go. So what kind of challenges are you seeing there at the infrastructure level, at the cognitive level, and what's the roadmap that you have at Project Kanda on that?
So I think one of the pieces of Gentic AI that I've been thinking about for a good while has been when we had 20 years ago-ish, when we started using PDFs, circulating PDFs, signing PDFs to invoke a contract, to mean a contract. There was a DocuSign moment, if you like where there was a moment legally where that e-signed document was considered equivalent to a wet signature. We'd all used that technology for a number of actual years before that was considered to be legally equivalent. And we have something similar where when we have, through digital, when we have these individual agents, at what point are they legally the same entity as you? They're acting on your behalf, and you're responsible for the actions of that agent. And so there's a need to make sure that this is designed in such a way where the actions of this personal agent working for you are under your jurisdiction, under your responsibility. So there's a cryptographic linking of the actions of agents that brings that back to your identity. And so that's part of the critical infrastructure here, so that if an action takes place, it's known who bears responsibility for that. And so that's really important, because without that close tie, without that known responsibility, then we don't develop trust. And I think something like this is critical to have a trusted component develop there. And that just needs to be baked into the infrastructure. It's not something that each individual wants to spend much time, like in the general population, they don't want to spend much time thinking of that. When you swipe a credit card, you don't think about all of the potential compliance and fraud type scenarios. Other business providers do that are in that chain, but that's not what you want to think about when you're swiping your card, or in India when you're scanning the QR code. So I think that's one piece that's really critical. Sorry, just repeat the rest of your questions.
What's there in your roadmap at Project Nanda? What are the things that you're starting to think about more deeply?
And so going back to the interoperability requirement for an open internet, where you're going from one system that needs to interoperate with a different system. That's one of the critical pieces. On the roadmap, we're looking at not just developing a technical solution in isolation, but a technical solution that has a lot of the leading partners. So very quickly, Project Nanda started out as the academic research group, work of an academic research group. Very quickly had a lot of very deep industry input into how the protocols needed to be designed, what might be some of the issues there, and so and to map that out in a way that was going to be required by industry, or in such a way that was going to be adopted more quickly in industry. I think one thing I have echoes of this from my years in advertising, and that is when you're shown an advert too many times, the consumer doesn't like it. Fundamentally, the consumer doesn't matter. The consumer doesn't mind if that advert is shown on a mobile device, on a laptop, on a desktop computer. You don't perceive that as different. You've still been shown that advert in different ways. And it's critical as we look to the rollout of Digidoo, that we find what's the privacy boundary. Most of the interaction, I would say, is going to be through a mobile device, but that's not the only part of your privacy boundary. And so we need to bake in really carefully that we're extending the privacy boundary to include what a consumer sees as their digital life, and that's non-trivial, but it's a problem that's going to be necessary to be solved. That is part of the critical, I would say, roadmap for this. I think the interaction piece, we see the roadmap as being part of a very deep, very broad, open agentic web. But I think the success of that will come from what comes first. What comes first is kind of agent to agent, and maybe within your ecosystem, and then agent to agent, crossing some kind of organizational or trust boundary. You may be, for example, have a closer trusted relationship if your agent is working with an agent in your inner circle of, let's say, your family, and then an inner circle of, let's say, your colleagues, and then kind of steps out to the broader world. And it's important to see the value add come over time, and I think that will lead to the development of better technical systems to deal with those transactions, knowledge transfer, but also it'll help develop the development of trust for the users, which will be critical. And the other piece that I think is going to be necessary on our roadmap, and that is education. This is a very new technology, and it's a very new way of thinking about how something might impact your life, and how that tool might benefit your life. And I think back to, I spent a number of years in agriculture a long time ago, and when if you're ploughing a single furrow with an ox, you can have a tractor that can pull 10 furrows, but it's only useful if you've learned how to drive. And in the same way with this type of technology, we need to learn how to get the most from it. I would think most of us can put our hands up, and if we're honest, and say we use maybe 10 or 20% of the functionality of our smartphone right now. There's a lot of functionality that we just don't tap into. And I think the same will be true on the agentic side, but we'll capture some of that if we
we put onto this roadmap, the consumer education part of it.
I think it's interesting since you talk about the consumer education part, and a popular narrative right now is about, and I read this headline every day, that AI is going to take 50% of the white collar jobs away, and somehow that narrative is building, right? That AI is going to subvert human effort, right? And I find it very surprising, and at the same time, it's also a bit presumptuous. I would say that, because whatever foundation models are, right, they're not really foundational right now, right? I mean, in fact, I would strongly suggest you to ask all the AI cloud, AI chatbots that you're using, and you can go to the best models that they've got there, and ask them to draw a map of India, okay, as it sees, as it thinks. And you'll be so surprised, because the map that it comes out with, if you actually put it on in front of a newspaper, it might start a few wars. Because, there is not much data about India on the internet on which these foundation or so-called foundation models are trained. And that also tells you that, what the limitations are in terms of the jagged intelligence, right? But if you couple each agent with a human oversight, right? And that's what you're essentially doing when you're actually providing, this kind of a do to everyone, right? Where you're saying that whatever AI is, you basically have it anchored with this human identity, right? And then you can use it, you can train it. So it's just like a kid that you train, right? Right now AI is probably at the 4 or 5 year age a kid, right? It knows how to, we have these humanoid agents with robots which have learned to walk, and now it has learned to talk, right? So it is roughly like 5-year-old kid. But you don't give the car keys to a 5-year-old kid, right? So when you're making agentic perspective the main focus of the workflows, right? It's very important that they are actually chained by the human identity, so that because the agents are easy to create but very difficult to control, right? So I think a critical piece which probably has to be provided by maybe the government at scale is like, okay, how do I chain it? In India, it's very interesting. We have 1.4 billion people who have digitized human identity, right? So we could actually experiment with how would that actually work out, right? What if I give you an agent which actually can trace you back as the owner of that agent, right? Or person who is responsible for training that, right? And maybe that could make the current jagged intelligence work, right? So at the moment, intelligence we have, the models that we have, they're not foundational. They're general models. They're able to make things work in a variety of ways, but they're not foundational today. Maybe for the foundational models, we have to add, maybe neurosymbolic, maybe word models. Maybe then you get to foundational models which are precise, which probably are truly foundational, right? So one of the questions that I would like to ask, Dr. Srivas, that when people are talking about job loss, people are talking about, that's everybody, large AI company which is trying to raise a lot of money, basically wants to scare, that okay, there's going to be job loss and I'm going to aggregate all the value, to myself. So please fund me because I will be the aggregator of all that value. Whereas I see that in reality, probably that is not going to play out. So the role of the aggregator of this kind of infrastructure is going to be the government, right? So how do you see government kind of playing a balancing role, in making that happen?
A great question. Undoubtedly AI will change the nature of work, the function, how we are performing. But when I see it from the government perspective, it's more of an opportunity than like job loss. Because see, currently in the state government, nearly 50% of people are vacant, and our efficiency is down. Now, thanks to AI, how actually it can make it better. So I see it like more of a job transformation than of a job elimination. It's like transition is that anxiety is true, but how are we going to manage it? How responsibly we are going to do it? I think that is the question government should play a role. Maybe reskilling and capacity building is one thing we should focus on. See, government job is heavily on judgment basis, heavily on the decision making. Probably the government can look into that decision making, citizen interaction, whereas the routine jobs where repetitive things can be handled very efficiently by the AI stuff. So I see it as an opportunity than a threat to the government.
Thanks, Dr. Shivas. That was very interesting. Maybe government could pioneer, this new model, right, that we're talking about, and maybe that could actually give a counterpoint, right? So I see that, like you have, there's the whole Silicon Valley ecosystem, right, which has got this perspective that we could probably, in some ways, right, like the internet was created by all of us, right, but it is being exploited by a few right now, right? In some ways, I feel that maybe this agentic internet, right, could potentially go the same way, right, and that's where I think that the AI for citizens could actually, probably change the direction a bit. Maybe like internet, like all infrastructure. Imagine if the road to agentic world may not belong to you, right? Maybe it belongs to a company where you have to give rent to that, and that could potentially have a lot of all kinds of questions, right? Given the fact that how fairness and other aspects of that kind of monopoly could apply. So maybe I think in India, just like the way India experimented with UPI, right, which has gone a very different trajectory, right, as compared to credit cards in US, right, or in other parts of the world. And today, even if you go to a street vendor, he can, take it out, he can pay through that, and that has actually truly democratized that, right? So even when we are talking about democratization of AI, because AI, if all of that power is only in the hands of a few individuals or few companies, it will potentially get misused, right? It's not about that it may or it may not. I think it will get misused, right? So that kind of concentration of wealth and power would be very tricky for human society to navigate. So maybe the model that India is looking at, right, where you could actually have DPI for AI, digital public infrastructure for AI, the kind of things that we're talking about with digital, right? The kind of ecosystem, the questions that we are pushing for in terms of the open agentic maybe browser that needs to come out, right? So these are tough problems, and we need all of your efforts to solve it. If you are an innovator, AI research lab, government, regulator, a large company or a small company, Indian or global, if you're working on all of these three major problems, we have this moonshot for humanity open at bharat1.ai. Please register for that moonshot. We are aligning infrastructure and capital, and we'll be very happy to share that Government of Karnataka is also a partner in that. So if you apply, you can go to the website and you can apply. We're also having a close and integral relationship with Project Nanda and of course Ramesh Raskar, a good dear friend. And maybe this way we can actually create a counterpoint to the current narrative in AI. So I'm very hopeful about that. We are in booth number 6.25, all 6, ground floor. Please visit us. We'll be happy to talk you through how we're trying to help bring this ecosystem together. So thank you so much, Chris. Thanks, Dr. Shivas. It was amazing to interact with you. Thank you so much.
कौन बनाया है? ये आपका है ना?
नहीं, मेरा नहीं है।
और हमारे वो स्पीकर्स का, हाँ हम ही लोग का है। और कहाँ के स्पीकर? दो ही था क्या? देखो और कहाँ? मेरे पास जो चाबी है उससे तो नहीं खुल रहा है। पता चलता lock the This is the interconnect tab. You need to download this. Once you download, this is how it happens. Share your ideas.
I'm talking about this
So I don't know how the right people they have got the help and maybe probably in the second half of the we are here around. No, I don't think so. Definitely we have our collaboration with it, but we cannot get into the details of it.
So we want to implement our healthcare idea into medical So we want to implement into the Center of Medical Innovation.
Definitely we have this great innovation program supported by BFI. But the greatest details will be the second half of the program. We are here around. This interconnect that really helps people to come up with their ideas, and that's how we process it and once we support that for what will happen. This is one program where we engage with the government stakeholders. We have one faculty from IIT Madras and from colleges. We are also closely associated with our seniors, more than 30 full stack program. Yeah.
We are one of the startups. 10%. Sana either
There is one backend. You need an electric connection or you need it?
yeah, we need a
The first one you can use.
there HDMI needed.
Yeah, HDMI cannot, that I cannot work with. Have you not got it?
Yeah, we have got it.
Give me 2 seconds. This is hall number. So this is hall number 3. You have to go to the left side. You will get hall number 4 and then 5. I think we have to go first and then 5. That's what we say. So we need to go to 9 and 1. Try this in hall number 5. Find it in
try to get it.
Okay, just give us one HDMI.
Only HDMI cable.
Yeah, our laptop, we haven't bring the charger. No issues. Just turn on the TV and give us a HDMI.